The second example here is a little bit more complicated. There's more terms and they're, I guess, more complicated terms. But just like before, we're looking for the highest common factor. So the highest number that can be divided by all of our terms. Again, we're going to look at our coefficients first. Now I've got a 12, or a negative 12, a negative 4, and a 3. Now the problem in this case, if you looked at just the negative 12 and the negative 4, you could go, well, both of those can be divided by 4. Or you could look at the 12 and the 3 and say, well, both of them can be divided by 3. But with highest common factor, we need all of them to be divisible. And so if you think about that, 12, 4, and 3, there's not really any number apart from 1 that can be divided by all of them. So in fact, this isn't going to have a number, a coefficient come out as in our highest common factor. However, if we look at the algebra, you'll see everything has at least an x squared in it. There's an x squared, an x cubed, and an x squared. So that would mean that I'm going to have an x squared can come out the front. Having a look at the next letter, I've got a y cubed, and a y to the 4. So each term has at least a y cubed in it. So I can put that out the front. And looking at the z's, this term, the first term, and the last term have a z in them, but the middle one doesn't. So that's not a common factor to all three. So I can't factorize it out the front. So that's everything I've looked at. I'm going to put my brackets in now. I'm going to put what's left over. So this first term, I've factorized out the x squared. I've factorized out the y cubed. I haven't factorized out the negative 12 or the z. So that's what's going to be left over. Negative 12z. Again, you can check that this is right by expanding x squared y cubed through. Next up, factorised out an x squared and a y cubed from this term. What's left over? Well, there's a negative 4 that didn't get factorised out, and there's an x that didn't get factorised out. Finally, this last term, we've said x squared y cubed has been factored out, so I'm just left with a 3, x squared's gone, the y to the 4, I've factored out a y cubed, so there's one y left over, and there's a z. Now, this is absolutely right, this is the factored form. However, sometimes when we see more negative signs than positive signs in a bracket, there's something else that we can do. So sometimes you might see this answer written with a negative 1 factorised out. Now that might seem confusing because this doesn't have a negative 1 in it. However, if I brought a negative 1 out, that would be like this is being divided by negative 1. So I can change that plus sign to a negative. So I can choose to factorise out a negative here. Factorising the negative 1 out here will leave me with 12z. Factorising out here will leave me with 4x, positive 4x I should say. Factorising negative 1 out of here, a positive divided by a negative will leave me with a negative 3yz. So generally the rule there is if I pull a negative sign out the front, I just flip all the signs in the bracket. This negative becomes a positive, this negative becomes a positive, this positive becomes a negative. And that's okay as well. So either of those forms are correct. Just wanted you to be aware of that because sometimes the textbook will have one of these answers but not the other. And you need to be able to tell that they're in fact the same thing.